A chainsaw. It's one of the first things I bought when I moved to the countryside a year ago. Why? Because Arnold had one in Commando. And that is good enough for me. I then went on YouTube to figure out how to maintain and keep one sharp. And it turns out that most experts on there all appear to be extras from the Dukes of Hazzard. Banjos aside, they know what they're talking about, and it turns out keeping a chain sharp on one of these is something of a skill, maybe even an art, that is best perfected over many, many years. But I'm 52 and don't have many years, so I bought myself, buckle up Uncle Jesse, a machine to do it. So here's the plan. Jen is still away. She said as long as I got the steps built outside, which I have done, I could move on to creating my chainsaw station to go on the wall here. I'm gonna give myself about 11 hours to do it. Let's go.
So the new unit is going to be going on the wall here, which means clearing everything off of the existing unit. That one is cheap, nasty, wobbly and useless. A year ago it would have gone straight into the skip, but I've since adopted a slightly more farmer attitude to stuff like this, so I'm going to be holding on to it just in case. Right, time for the magic to happen. Except it wasn't, because there's a million jobs to do here and most of them are outside. So the rule is, if it's dry and daylight, go outside and do something. Currently that means do something until it starts to rain again, you get soaked and can then return to doing what you were doing inside. Step one is to work out how tall I want this thing to be, and I'm going for about the same as me, 6'6", or just under 2 meters. Now as I start cutting the 4 main legs to this thing to size, do not be fooled. This is not a tutorial on how to build something, because I have no idea how to build anything. If I seem to be moving around the workshop with the confidence of a man that seems to have a plan, that is down to how I've edited this. Having said that, what I lack in knowledge, I make up for in having all the toys. Lots of people call this all the gear, no idea. But when I hear people say that, I just buy another toy to annoy them. What you are looking at here is me using my Bulldog track saw table with a Makita track saw, which is attached to an extra long vacuum hose running all the way to my shop vac. That hose is suspended on a rope system up in the ceiling to keep it out of the way, and the vac itself controlled by remote control. Like nearly everything in this workshop, this was all put together after just Googling cool workshops and then copying what people were using online. Apart from the rope in the ceiling, that bit was all me. With all 4 legs cut, it was then time to mark where I wanted the shelves to go. The idea was that the first shelf would leave enough space for a storage box to go underneath on the floor, the second shelf would go roughly level with the existing bench, the third shelf would be high enough to use the chainsaw grinder on, and the fourth shelf would be on top. It was now time to decide how to fix the shelves to the uprights. If you're thinking, shouldn't you have decided that already? No, I'm making everything up here as I go. I watched loads of YouTube videos on how other people do it and decided to ignore all of them and instead use my router. Right, this is a router. Those are bits for a router. That's a box that the router comes in. That's the extent of my router knowledge. Actually, that's not quite true, because I've watched at least 4 videos of people using a router, and that's half the battle. So the plan here was to cut out some indents into the uprights that the shelves could then fit into. So I simply measured the thickness of the shelf and the thickness of the wood that the shelf was going to sit upon, and then cut that size slot into each of the uprights. And I did that using a router bit that protruded approximately 10mm from the base of the router. And it all went relatively straightforwardly. In fact, the only complication was trying to decide how to guide the router. At first I used the actual track saw itself, but that wasn't particularly successful. I then tried doing it freehand, and that was about as successful as you'd expect it to be doing it freehand. And then the sun came out, so I had to go back outside and do more jobs there. 2 hours later and I was soaked again and back in the workshop. The good news is that I now knew what I was doing with the router. That meant it took no time at all to do the next 3 cutouts on the first upright. With that one finished exactly the way I wanted it, I then rattled through the next 3 in no time at all. I don't think it's right for me to say after such a short time that I'm now a router expert, but if other people were commenting, that's probably what they would say. Right, so I got my 4 uprights done with the shelf to just clear the plastic box, the shelf that will be the same level as that table, the shelf to put the chainsaw sharpening thing on, and a shelf at the top. Now I've got to make the shelves, which I'm not sure how to do, so I need to go and think about that. It is probably more sensible to plan a project like this in advance, but there is an undeniable excitement in just winging it. Decision made. It's going to be 2 foot deep and it's going to be 4 foot long. 4 foot
I could go a bit longer, but I want space on the end of this unit to hang stuff before it sticks out past this wall. So 4 foot would be perfect. So I'm going to rip the boards down to 4 foot long from their original 6 foot, and then put a framework around the base, and then do whatever you do next. I've got no idea really. I'm making it up as I go along. So I have my 4 shelves at 4 foot by 2 foot. I now need to just make a frame somehow.
In case you're curious what the thought process is behind each decision made on this project, I thought I'd leave this bit of footage in just to demonstrate. As you can see, it is basically me just looking at pieces of wood while confused for a very long time. So with the plan in place, it was time to cut 4 pieces of wood to create a rectangular frame to go on the base of the shelf. I then screwed those pieces together, flipped the whole thing over and screwed the shelf onto the frame. With the first shelf complete, I then grabbed my router so that I could round over the edges. This wood did not have pre-rounded corners, and I did Google why some construction timber comes with rounded edges and some doesn't, but quickly got bored of doing that. Although one reason I did see was that it simply makes it nicer to handle, and that is very true. This sharp edge on here is something I wanted to get rid of because it's where I'm going to be reaching under to get things at the back of the shelves and didn't want to be banging my hands on it. Although I didn't route it all the way to the edges because a sharp right angle at the very ends would help it sit better into the indents in the uprights. With that complete, it was time to fit the first shelf to the rear uprights, which was a simple enough process because the shelf fitted perfectly into the indents that I had routed out, and I then simply screwed through from underneath. What to do next did require a bit more thought though. And a decision was made. So having built the bottom shelf already, I figured I'd now build the top shelf. I could then fit both shelves to all 4 uprights and figure out how to fit the middle shelves in afterwards. Right, top shelf built, going to fit the top shelf and then fit the front legs and then stand the whole thing up. In theory. So same process as before, I used the router to smooth off the edges of the shelf and then fitted it to the rear uprights by screwing through from underneath. When I mounted the front legs, the original plan was to also screw from underneath and behind so that you couldn't see the fixings, but because the whole thing was too big to turn around to do that comfortably, I simply used some cool looking fixings that I could use from the front and wouldn't mind being seen. It is upright and not fallen over. Arnold would be proud. I've got to get a bit more wood to do the supports for these 2 middle shelves. They're just resting on their loose for now to see what it looks like, and it looks good. Yeah, got to go to town and get the wood tomorrow, get the shelves done, fit it to the wall, then get the chainsaw thing mounted up here.
Right, it is day 2. This morning at 7:30, I was at the timber yard, got the bits of wood I need to do the bottom of the shelves. It's now about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've spent all day in the cold and the mud outside, so nice to be back in here. Going to stick the heater on, bang out these 2 shelves, and then bolt it to the wall.
Now that I knew what I was doing, it took me no time at all to put these 2 shelves together, and I did it in a perfect temperature. When we renovated the barn at the beginning of this year, our biggest expenditure by far were the air conditioning and heating units mounted inside the gym and the workshop, but they have proven to be absolutely superb. The walls on this barn are almost 1 metre thick and solid stone. That means if you can get it down to temperature in the summer, it will stay that way all day, and likewise in the winter, once it's brought up to temperature, it stays toasty and warm. Money well spent.
Right, both shelves are done and ready to go up. I just realised clearly that in my excitement to put something together yesterday, I've now left myself needing to somehow fit the shelves while it's built. The sensible thing to do would be to take it apart again, but I'm going to see if I can avoid it.
And I did avoid it. By opening the fixings at the bottom, I was able to pull the front legs out, wedge the new shelves into position, clamp them in place, and then screw it all together.
Done. Now I've got to figure out how to fix it to the wall, which normally wouldn't be that hard. The trouble is the walls in here are a few hundred years old and made of stone, clearly. So it's not the easiest thing to fix into. You have to basically just drill and hope. At least it's level. Right, having said it's level, it's not quite. It is by the smallest amount tipping it forward away from the wall, probably because the floor slightly rises there and so the back end will be slightly higher. But we're talking millimetres. The problem is at the same time, the wall is also doing the same the other direction, resulting in a bit of a gap. If I bolt it back to the wall, it means it's going to tip onto its back legs. It will lean away from me. So I think I'm going to put a block on the back wall and then fix to that.
Having fitted massive mirrors and TVs to the walls in the gym, I know that when drilling into these walls, it is hit and miss. If you hit a good solid stone, then your fixing will be literally rock solid. But if you go into the lime mortar between the stones, you need to simply give up and try again.
It would be very unwise to actually test it, but theoretically you could probably climb on this. Time now for a bit of a tidy up and then fitting the chainsaw grinder to it and a couple of other bits and pieces and figure out how to get down. Genuinely unsure how to get down. Hope that was bloody recording.
Now, some people will question whether a unit that is this solidly built needs to be fixed to the wall at all. But you've got to ask yourself, what would happen if a small child was to find themselves in my workshop? If that were to occur, it is very important that they are able to climb on this thing as high as possible. They will not learn a decent lesson about clambering on other people's things, falling off only the bottom shelf.
There's a bit more tidying up to do, but it's getting very boring doing that. So I'm going to start putting some things on the shelving unit. The first of which is some way to hold my workbench things, which have a slot in them for a piece of 2x4. So I'm thinking if I put a piece on here, I can just hook them on the side. Right, let's get this chainsaw grinder thing attached somehow.
Now, just in case you're the sort of person that likes to jump into the comments and give feedback on health and safety, first of all, well done for making it this far through the video. And secondly, yes, I know this grinder is not supposed to be installed at eye level, but the people that I've seen using it online have been using it up in the air like this, and they're the ones that seem to be finding it most comfortable. Clearly, I will always be using it wearing eyeglasses or protection of some sort. The real danger would be using it at the specified level, which is waist height pretty much, and give myself a bad back.
And it is finished. Let me give you a little tour of what's going on here and then take you through how this bad boy works. So on the floor, power lead and then a couple of containers that are still unused. So that's good, more storage space available there. Next shelf up, another unused container, emergency tow rope, and my box of all my chainsaw safety gear in it. So trousers, boots, gloves, helmet, goggles, tourniquet kit, all that sort of stuff. Next shelf up is the battery tools that there isn't room for, or they don't fit on the storage unit over there. On the top, dust sheets and tarpaulins, some garage kitchen roll and vacuum bags up there. And then obviously the middle shelf we'll come back to, the chainsaw gear. Got my first aid kit and emergency torch over there, and on the side these working exactly as I hoped. Can grab them, go and use them on the job, come back in here, throw them back on there, perfect. And it is clearly rock solid, going nowhere. These beveled edges are nice. It means I'm not going to scratch myself when I'm reaching under here to get in there. No, it's worked out exactly as I hoped it would. Right, this. Now I know that people are going to say you should learn how to sharpen a chainsaw chain with a proper file. I have proper files. I bought so many stupid things to try and do it the way you're supposed to do it. I've got all the little kits with the little... I've tried it. People are going to say, oh, we tried that clever thing from steel with the multiple blades. Yes, I've tried that as well. I've tried it all. If this thing works as planned, what it will let me do is take the 3 chains that I have for my main chainsaw, the 3 or 4 chains I've got for my little Makita chainsaw, and the 3 that I have for my steel long pole saw, sharpen them all at once, real quick and easy, 20-minute, half-hour job maybe, and then they are sharp. And when I go out, I can just take a spare chain or 2 and throw that on if the old one, the existing one, gets blunt or damaged. People are going to say, when you're out and about, you can sharpen a chainsaw faster with a file. I can't. I simply can't. It's quicker for me to change a chain than it is to sharpen a chain, especially out and about. So, how does this work? Incredibly straightforward, as it turns out. It looks really complicated, but I watched a video this morning on YouTube of a guy demonstrating how to use it. You might be thinking, Mark, how do you pick, as a YouTuber yourself, YouTubers to watch? Well, the guy demonstrating this started to explain it and then said that he didn't know the terminology for all the different parts involved. He simply knew the words that he used as a logger and a chainsaw man.
So we don't have time to sit around hand filing a bunch of chains.
I thought that's good enough for me. So, here's what you do. And stating the obvious, this is not a tutorial on how to use this. If you're watching this for that, you are insane. Okay, so very, very simple. Let's put a chain on. So you drop your chain on, you set the thickness of the chain using your little dial on the front. It can now slide through there. You set the angle, set here to 30 degrees. That's easy to adjust, just undo that and that will move around there. So back on 30 degrees, tighten it up. You adjust the angle at which this comes down. You then have another dial on the back here that sets how far down you come before you tap out at the back. And then the last thing you do is you set this little stopper here, which acts to stop the chain from going backwards. So it just stops it there. When you advance it to the next link, it stops the chain. It might sound like a lot of bits and pieces to set up, but really it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 things and you're good to go. The beauty of it then is that once you set it up, you're set up for every single link on the chain, and if you're doing multiple chains, you just chuck the next chain on and carry on. So in theory, I can do all my chains way faster than I could do with a hand file, and most importantly, for a beginner especially, it's going to be consistent. Every single tooth is going to be sharpened exactly the same as the one before it and the one after it. If I'm doing it by a handsaw, that doesn't happen. Awesome bit of kit. Only thing left to do here is to extend that wire so it doesn't drapes across the unit like that. That'll be an easy job. And a slightly larger container to go at the back to keep all the bits and pieces in for the chainsaw grinder. Job done, and could not be happier. It is exactly what I wanted it to be. And it means that this part of the barn project is now complete. The gym was obviously done originally and done for a while now. This is finished. The cycle area behind me was finished a little while ago. There's nothing else to do in here, apart from maybe some storage for offcuts of wood that are just lying around at the moment, and a bit of a tidy up of some plasterboard that needs to be taken out of here and go elsewhere. It means that we can now move on to the last part of the barn project, which is the room next door, which is currently a complete mess. It's where we keep outdoor tools, earth augers, leaf blowers. You get the idea. If it's used outside and gets filthy, it goes in there. That room is currently the state that this was in when we moved in, so it needs to be repaired and fixed up and renovated, and then proper shelving and storage units put in there for all of that stuff. But it's all big gear, so it's going to need quite specific solutions. We're going to work on that over Christmas. So that is it, like and follow to see that happen. Actually, one more thing I have to mention, because it occurred to me that these might have been in the background as I was filming in here. And I thought I'd better clarify what they are, because if I don't, I will inevitably get people ask. These are to go on, trust me they are, the horn of a particularly aggressive horned animal. In our case, we used them on a goat that was being rather mean to some of our smaller goats. The idea is you stick it on the horn and it becomes less effective as a weapon. It becomes very effective as an object of ridicule. Unfortunately for us, it fell off the horns of our goats, so a bit useless. Which kind of begs the question, why have we kept them? The mind boggles.